It's like the 960 that I did for a double, and I had just torn the pectoral off, and Bruce Wilhelm said he's not getting his shoulders back. I did 2 and said, the second one's for you, Bruce. I could have done 10 reps with that.
One of the toughest strongmen in history, right here. It's not a beauty contest. It's a strongman. I'm to be alive. If you can't do that, and away we go! Hi, this is the first ever Giants Live Strongman Podcast, hosted by Radzi. Radzi.
Welcome to the Giants Live Strongman Podcast. Colin Bryce, Darren, Sadler, myself, and today's guest is none other than, in my opinion, the strongest man who's ever lived, the 3 times world strongest man, KAZ Kazmaier!
Thank you so much.
KAZ.
Thank you.
How are you?
Great to be here. Yeah. How do you want to start it off? Get some questions? What are you going to do?
Okay, can I start? Can I kick off with the very first question?
Sure.
Have you ever met a man who you think is stronger than yourself?
That's a great question.
I don't know. Yeah, a couple. Yuri Geller. He can bend spoons with his mind. Anybody that's got telekinetic powers is stronger than me. Because if I'm going to move something, I've got to use my hands. And I can't use my mind to float that cup across the table without touching it. That's real strength.
Daz, I was telling that story about when Bill came into your son's school to roll a pan.
Yeah.
And you got the wrong frying pan.
Oh yeah, we got a frying pan that was a bit too thick, but Bill still rolled it up. all these tricks of getting the thin frying pans, and we got a real proper thick, T-foul one.
Was there any anger? Was there any disgust when he saw it?
Well, he just said, "Oh, this is probably not the best one to do it in a cheese one."
I thought I said it was bollocks.
He just said, "I'll do it anyway,"
Yeah, if it's Teflon coated, that's when it becomes more difficult, right?
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised, some of the frying pans that you roll are thin, and you think, by looking at it visually, that's going to be easy. But they use a different metal.
Yeah.
So the thicker ones with the soft metal are the easy ones. Just got to pick the right one.
Because aluminium's are all cheapy ones, aren't they?
Pretty much. And if they have a lip on them, they're really hard. One day, over the weekend, Metrix became wholesalers from a pan company and bought 50 pans. In 2 days, I rolled 40 of those.
Wow. Did you train grip, Bill? Have you always had a strong grip?
Not really. As a matter of fact, when I did my powerlifting, all deadlift, all the lat work, I used straps and relaxed my hand so that I could take the bicep out of the pull and use back with whatever I was doing in the lift. So it dawned on me when I tried a world record deadlift, the day that I set the world record total at 1,100 kilos, I pulled 848 in pounds and tried 887, and I got it to the top of the lockout where it's literally 15 kilos I left on the platform because my grip opened up. So I never realized I've got a really short hand. And when it was really meaty, you could see what happens to the bar. It gets pushed out to the fingertips. I could have used some figure eights because I don't have that great a grip.
You got outrageous crushing strength. I guess there's different strengths. There's kind of a holding strength.
Yeah, that's true.
A crushing strength.
What year did the straps come in then on deadlift? Interestingly.
Was that sort of 2015-ish?
Well, when were they first allowed?
Yeah, when we won.
Straps first allowed in, I can think in 96 in Mauritius they used straps and deadlift max there.
As early as that?
Yeah, that's when but the Badenhorst pulled 410 on the Flintstone bar. Maggie was using very, very good straps. I remember Maggie had.
Yeah.
But no one had figure of eights then, that's for sure.
I really like the idea that straps are allowed only because it gives the athletes the ability to take the grip out of it. Maybe with a figure eight, drop it down to the fingertips, have a little longer lever, get in better position, and really find out who's the strongest guy.
And also then you can get some cool events to test grip as well, like Hercules hold and car hold and stuff like that, so you can still test the grip at a different event. I think doing a deadlift without straps and then having a grip event is probably too much on the guy.
Is there an event where you could test crushing strength? because it's all kind of holding strength, isn't it? Which is obviously something Felix is very good at.
Yeah.
But your particular forte was crushing. Is that all right? I mean, if you can do a thick frying pan, that's pretty darn good. I saw Brian Shaw trying a lot of different frying pans, actually. They actually bought like a whole smorgasbord of different ones to see what he could do and couldn't do.
I learned from a guy about 100 I think he was your size, Radzi. Dennis Rogers.
120 kilos.
Yeah, right. He had remarkable grip strength where he could bend a wrench. He could take a deck of cards, not only rip it in half, he'd tape his fingers together and he'd rip it in half like this. He would take and rip a chunk out of the center of a deck of cards.
How?
Wow. He had something really special that he connected with this higher power and was quite the religious man. And what he could do with his hands was truly remarkable. When he rolled a frying pan, he would take his wristwatch off, and after rolling it, he'd take it and stick it through his wristwatch. And he had pretty small wrists, so quite impressive.
Did you ever do the big yellow telephone books?
Yeah, but I had to, we stored them in the oven.
Yeah.
Because, you're not using your oven for baking anything, so you might as well cook the books. Pull one out when you need it, pop it, rip it. Yeah, it's easy.
That's interesting that you're saying that he had a thin wrist, because in my head, you need to have thick joints to have a good grip, but that isn't the case.
Well, in Dennis's case, he was an arm wrestling world champion. And oftentimes they talk about 2 tendons in the wrist, and he actually developed 3, which developed the 3rd one to the point where he had so much power. It was truly incredible what he could do. He could take a deck of cards and hold it out at arm's length and have a girl lay across his arms and still take that chunk out of the deck of cards. Dennis Rogers.
Yeah.
There's been a few guys over years, though, that have been in strongman and haven't really made a massive mark in strongman, but have had unbelievable grip and they go do these different challenges. Remember a guy years ago I competed against, remember the guy Lane Snook, remember Lane Snook? He went on to do amazing things in the grip world with all the Iron Mine challenges and stuff like that.
To tell you, Poundstone has I saw him do a claw hammer, just like that.
Yeah.
And he used to do the telephone books. And actually, I remember when we did Madison Square Garden back in the day, 2008, they actually got us on, the Garden got us on CBS Early Morning Show, which is like 25 million people. I remember being on Fifth Avenue and a very camp producer coming up, what's first then, guys? Like, Poundstone here, he's our man, he's our hero, he's going to rip some telephone books. Great, fantastic. And just before he did it, it was like a sort of a prophetic moment from Poundstone. He went, hey, Colin, just so you know, like 1 in 50, they double glue it in the system. Just to warn you, I always can do it, don't worry, I'll be fine, but and over back outside to whatever, our guys are going to be at Madison Square Garden tomorrow night. Hey, listen how strong Derek Poundstone is. He sat there, and there was this sort of like for 2 minutes, and he just sort of looked up at me and was like, oh no. Hey, drink another protein shake there, Derek. We'll come back to you later on. But the worst thing was, we then had it's nothing to do with grip, but it got worse. We had like 3 slots. So in the second slot, the guy was like, listen, can you do this, guys? We have another phone book. We'll do it again. We'll do it with another phone book. We'll explain what it is. Please give us another slot. Came back, so okay, you're going to do that, but then you're going to pull the bus, okay? And so Derek got all strapped in. So he came back, he pulls it, rips it. Thank God, he doesn't, the face has been saved. But now Derek's he's going to pull this bus. But it had been there since 4 a.m. and it flat spot. The tires were like squares. So it was almost on a downhill slope. You almost couldn't help but pull it when we got there. But by the time it came, the tires were flat, totally flat. So this awful moment of, here comes Derek. And if anyone's ever seen the footage, I've never seen it, thank God. But I grab about 3 of the other strongmen as I see what's happening. And I take them round the back and we start pushing the bus like this to try and finally we get it moving. Because it just, when a truck or bus flat spots, it's a nightmare. That's why you always keep driving backwards and forwards to keep the tyre pressure, keep it hot, the wheels hot. Anyway, it's just a nonsense story, but that was, when things go wrong on live telly.
Yeah, right.
Let me take you back to Dennis Rogers. I mean, what a guy. He took a horseshoe This is a regular horseshoe. And he straightened it out.
What's that
I
one?
went, wow, that's something. And then he kept bending and bending and bending, and he turned it into a heart
Get away.
with his bare hands. He gave me one that he straightened. Okay, it's about that long after it's straight. I took it back to the hotel. I looked around. I saw the safe. The door was open. It's this long. I weigh 330 pounds. I stick the edge of it into the door and close it. And I start leaning on it with all my weight. It's not giving. And ka-ching, the hinge of the safe breaks. How this guy is able to take that thing and bring it into a heart is totally phenomenal. He's truly something special.
So, I mean, my mind's working here. Surely you wrap the ends, right? That gives you more leverage. That has to happen, right? That's part of it.
It's softer, yeah, helps.
So, like, probably with, also with the tap, you know this well, don't you? At least I think you know this well, because Capes told me this. But when you crack the metal over your head in a bar bend, you have to be unbelievably quick to your neck. Do you know why? Please tell me you know why. You compete with
the heat.
The heat.
Sure.
Yes, the heat. Because as soon as it bends, the particles heat up, and no one's getting it moving again in that position. And it's quite a weak position, isn't it? You need that metal to be hot. At least you can feel the heat as you bend it and crack it over your skull. It's a ridiculous event, and then hit it as hard as you can, and it will keep going. It's heated up.
That makes sense.
So I assume he must. It's still mad, isn't it? How the heck you get the leverage on it to pull it without putting pipes on it or something?
I sure had a problem with that steel bar bend over the head back in the day when they first started off in 77 and 8 doing bar bend. They brought it in for us, and I bent a piece that was nearly 3/4 of an inch all the way to completion of hot rolled steel. But then for some reason they said, well, it didn't look good for TV, because one year they tried to paint it. So then the following year they said, yeah, train with the same one you've been using. I didn't bother to train at all. And when we showed up, they said, this looks better for TV. It's shiny. I thought, oh, that's nice. At least my neck won't get all full of dirt and crap. It was cold rolled steel, 3 times stronger, which,
Big time,
needless to say, tore the pectoral off. So what do you do after you tear your pectoral off in deltoid? There's 4 events left. Go to hospital, right? My doc says, come on, we got to go. I go, doc, you see that title right there? World's Strongest Man? And that trophy over there? And that check for 20 grand? My shoulder's all blown apart. I said, I'm not going to the hospital until I get my stuff. In the next 4 events, where do you think I'd end up? Probably 7th, 8th, 9th. Next event, squat. All week long, I had to listen to Dave Waddington's name announced as the man with the world's strongest legs, Dave Waddington. Screw that. I stuffed myself inside of that Smith bar rack and did 969 with my pectoral torn off.
Surely Wellington beat you, didn't he?
No. No. Heck no. But I know you like the bending stuff, but so out of those 4 events, I think I took a 6th in wrestling because I couldn't handle the guys with one hand. But I took a 3rd in the caber toss. And
was it a tendon or muscle tear in the pec?
Right in the middle of the pectoral. And
the big hole there, wasn't it?
The front deltoid came off. Yeah, there's
Do
still
you remember
a
there's a famous piece of commentary. The guy went, I believe Mr. Kazmaier has suffered some form of muscle pull. And Kaz is like, He's got you told in his chest.
Yeah, really painful.
Well, you're a genius, I'll tell you that, commentator.
But one of those bending things that I did with my hands over the years, I tore up my shoulders pretty bad. My doctor said, after 2 surgeries to this shoulder and 1 to the other one, he said, Bill, stop bending those bolts. We take a 10-inch bolt, 3/8 of an inch thick, and I'd get in front of a group of school kids and start to bend it. And as I did, I'd say, if you're kind and caring and sharing and thoughtful, forgiving, understanding, respectful, responsible, and loving. And I hold it up and it's bent into a horseshoe. I talk about karma and the seeds you sow, you reap. Things that you do come back to you. And so I used it as a prop, doing those things over quite a few years. And after the doc said, Bill, I can't do much for your shoulders, but just don't bend any more bolts, I bent 500 more. Some guys never learn.
Bill, back then, how long before you competed did you find out what the events were?
The night before that day.
As late as that?
Yeah. Well, really a shame in the first one I went into. I came out of Southern California after going to the Powerlifting World Championships. Terry Todd invited me to his house and to train for World's Strongest. I didn't know he was going to be the commentator. He didn't tell me there was a barrel lift. He didn't tell me there was a truck pull. He didn't tell me any of the events. We just went into the gym, did squat, deadlift, press, bench press, some overhead dumbbell work. No emphasis on anything. And I got to the show, and then there were the events. Little did I realize Don Reinhold, Bob Young, and all the other athletes had been training with this stuff for a couple of years. So just imagine like in a barrel lift. I think I missed 300 and Don did a 310. If I would have had 2 or 3 workouts, I would have done 320. And Don trained with it for a couple of years. So being prepared for the events is truly important.
What did you military press back in the day?
You know, we had a competition here in England where we did dumbbell presses. I think they were 121s for 17, 18 reps. We had a clean and jerk or clean and press. I did near 400 pounds.
So we're talking about 180 kilos, 182s, 400, so 180.
I did a lot of stuff in a Smith rack and free bar pressing.
Because, I mean, military pressing was it was part of Olympic lifting for a while, wasn't it? It used to be the clean and press, clean and jerk, and snatch. Powerlifting, at one point, was curl.
I was going to say curl, yeah.
Bench, squat, deadlift. Was it 4? Or did bench come in, or did deadlift come in and replace curl?
It would have been the 60s, and I'd never heard of a curl in a powerlifting competition. But so squat, bench,
They
and
did have curl,
deadlift.
didn't they, back in the day?
I think, in my head...
My dad's a bit older than you, but yeah, I'm sure he's 80s and he used to do powerlifting. I think it was, wasn't it?
It's amazing how it's changed though now. Like the guys, we give the guys events 3 or 4 months before, and we try to make sure nothing changes and everything. Everybody's, if they don't have one piece of equipment, they're not happy. You know what I mean? Everyone's got to, which is right. There's less injuries as well.
Yeah.
If the guys train on the kit, they're not going to get injured as much, and you're going to get a more rounded athlete by training all that versatility. But strongman wasn't probably as big as well, was it? You know, you didn't have gyms full of equipment like you do now. Everywhere you live, there's a
Strongman's
gym.
is kind of trendy now, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see, I mean, it's now a part of, sort of very trendy trainers online. People are flipping tires. It's not just some sort of
even 15
weirdos
years ago.
kind of,
You needed if you want to train on strongman stuff, you had to make it yourself. Whereas now, everyone can go just find somewhere, farmers walks, yokes, things like that. So I think that's why you're getting such an influx of lads coming through, because they can get the kit.
I think CrossFit's helped.
Definitely,
Because it means people my size can practice doing things that normally superhumans get to do.
Yeah.
And it works.
If my mind serves me correctly, Yoko Ahola was probably the first 25 years ago in 97 to do all events. And the one thing he did in powerlifting was deadlift. We often thought that when he got up out of his bed and he started to walk down the hall to go to the bathroom, there was a deadlift bar or some stones. He'd lift those, go to the bathroom, go get some milk, and come back. When you looked at this guy with his power, it was as if when he got off that bed to go down the hall and he wanted to get a glass of milk, he could probably have just gone right through the wall. But that was the choice he had to make.
And Yoko was the lightest guy ever to win it, I believe.
I think he was 117 in 1 year and 119 in another year.
That must be the lightest guy to win it, surely.
And his arms.
What were you your lightest when you competed? Out of interest.
Like 115 first year, and by my last year I was like 122, something like that.
You've almost has Dad's ever looked any different? He's like
Massive.
I feel different.
how long have we known you now? 20 odd years, 22, 23 years. You look identical.
The crazy thing is, though, Daz, is you think, so how long, was it 2015 you did Britain's?
Last time I did Britain 16, yeah.
And so you think, how old were you then?
36.
So roll on almost exactly 20 years and Mark Felix is still competing.
Oh, yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Mark's first competition I was in it, and it was a Britain Strongman qualifier in Spennymoor. And we turned up, and you had to do, I can't remember the exact numbers, you had to do, it was a 120 log and a somewhere around a 300 deadlift. And if you didn't do one of those, you had to go home. So Mark turned up, couldn't do the log, and then went home.
Really?
That was it. So if he couldn't do the first one of those, you just dropped out. That was it. He couldn't go on. And I think he did the deadlift first, then he did the log, couldn't do it, and went home. And I often say this about Mark. Imagine if he had a good press, because he got so many podiums. Mark's pressing isn't very good. It's no secret, but he still gets on the podiums. So imagine if he was a good presser, because he's not like he's got the muscle on his shoulders. You know, he's a big guy. You know,
he's never been a good presser.
If he was a mediocre presser, he'd have had a lot more titles.
Yeah,
but he's great. Everything's great at grip. He's back strong. You know.
But what was his best WSM final finish? He's been there 3 times now?
I want to say like 5th or something like that.
I think he was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think he was. Don Pope was the 2006, wasn't it? He came 5th, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
It was the oldest guy to do World
Fister,
Strongest
Marius,
Man.
Pope were on the podium.
Odd Hogan's probably the oldest one to do it. I think.
What about Badenhorst?
No, I think Odd Hogan.
No, Odd Haugen was 55 or 56.
He was in
the same year, 2006.
Yeah.
Same year. There was a lot of.
Yeah, I was there that year.
Remarkable guy.
Kaz was there
you
that
did
year.
pretty well there.
Hey,
You did pretty well there.
right, yeah.
I've got a photo of you two together. Actually,
Yeah.
I should give it to you. It's in my office.
I'm
from
not
that
sure if
year.
I was the first one to call you the giant killer or not.
Yeah, you were obsessed with that whole thing.
I'm going, wait a minute. This guy's like a little bit shorter, but a little bit wider and a little lighter. But the things he was doing with the weights were phenomenal.
It's strange because you go, you look at people. Obviously, Kaz is retired. I'm retired, and you look at it and like your mindset then is so different to now, because not you know like towards the end of your career, so you go into World's Strongest Man, you're thinking, I might go this year, I might have one more go. Whereas when you're younger, someone asks if you're going to World's Strongest Man, I'm like, yes, because I'm still breathing. I'm going to go. and when it's the time of when you're not sure whether you should go, you shouldn't go.
So there's an amazing.
It's true though, isn't it? If you're not sure, that's time to. Or it's like someone, should I have this boxing match? If you're even asking that question, don't have it.
Don't do
You know,
it.
they do the docs every year, and they would do sort of the behind the scenes stuff. I remember a behind the scenes on one year that you went, and it was the year that you got married.
Yeah.
And they cut to a shot of your wife, and then they say, "How happy are you to be here?" And she just went, "We shouldn't even be here."
This is my honeymoon. Yeah. We changed the date of the wedding, which went on anyway. Yeah. We were meant to be on honeymoon, yeah, but they changed the date of World's Strongest Man. I actually booked the wedding around World's Strongest Man, then they changed the date. So we got married and flew straight out to Anaheim in 07. So
It's such a romantic.
it was a free honeymoon,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's weird how your mindset changes, and you look back at that. Still love trading that, but you look back, and it seems like you were a different person back then. Like it seems like that guy was like just somebody they used to know or something. You know what I mean? It's really weird to think like that.
But is it tough to look at guys now and think, I know I could have beaten those guys?
Yeah, that happens all the time. Excuse me.
People talk about you a lot. I don't know. It's specifically you. They say, "What if you put Kazmaier in that?"
Yes.
A lot of people say that.
Well, Kaz was so far ahead of the rest of his era at one point, which is why I think people constantly say, "Okay, Kaz, you, what do you think of these guys lifting these incredible deadlifts?" Then, and I think your answer is always perfect. At your time, you went up and you outlifted everybody in every lift, just pretty much every lift, and so, sometimes by some enormous margins. And you won the WSM by 25 points, Kaz?
Yeah, a little bit more. I think I beat Capes by 30 one year, and Lars Sadler had one more. So I beat Lars by 29.
How much more could you do then? So that's why it's fascinating. So era to era.
When the thing is comparing it is like, I don't know. It's like saying, "Oh, what's better, a 50-year-old classic Ferrari or a new Ferrari?" Well, you can't really compare those things, can you?
Yeah.
They both got the. You know what I mean? You can't. They raced against different cars. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll try. Let's take deadlift back in the day with the coin lift, silver dollar. It's a lot like the elephant bar, or at the Arnold with the Hummer tires. Hummer tires, once you're over the knees, it's still bending. You're almost stood up before it's really off the floor, and you're locking out. Especially at my height. Imagine back in the day when I did a squat at 870 pounds and I tore one adductor. So what do? You stop? Hell no, you wrap it. You go 950 and tear the other one. Now you're headed into deadlift. The first warm-up is 300. Really tough Got to go stiff-legged. The last warm-up is 600. We start off at 7. I'm stiff-legged. 7, 8, 9, 925, 50, 75, 1,000. The other competitors are going, oh, they're getting bored. It's me and Ernie Hackett. We ended up at 1,055. Just imagine 2 healed legs. It's like the 960 that I did for a double, and I had just torn the pectoral off, and Bruce Wilhelm said he's not getting his shoulders back. I did 2 and said, the second one's for you, Bruce. I could have done 10 reps with that. So
watching that.
Second one's for you. Yeah.
So, when you say then and now, and have the athletes really gotten that much stronger? I don't know. I think I could have done about a 1,200-pound elephant. So that'd be right up in there.
Suit, figure of eights, things like that. Things, yeah.
I'm going to just chuck something else out there. So I watched this interview and they were talking about who are the greatest sportsmen of all time. And they made a criteria. And they said it's impossible to compare eras, but here's how we're going to do it. So to be a great, you need to not only be the leader in your era, you need to have a defining moment. So they were saying, for example, in gymnastics, Simone Biles, Olga Komenech, etc. What's that moment? Then, how many eyeballs did you bring to the sport that didn't watch before? And then also the size of the sport as well. So it's no good being the greatest ever Tiddlywinks champion because no one's really playing it. But with yourself, if you ask anyone who watches Strongman, what are your favourite moments? At the moment, the last, say, 10 years, you might say Eddie pulling 500 kilos. You go back and include your era, there are so many defining moments. Even just the way your eyes protrude out of your head alone before you lift is... right! The wrestling moment, the Smith machine. There's so many. So for me, it's just undeniable on every measuring stick. The greatest.
Oh, you're
Just my opinion.
My contention is that...
How much are you paying Radzi?
Plenty. My contention is that I kind of like to look at athletes and how they perform. I remember a guy in Africa, big guy with a beard, got a hangnail, so he went home. I tore shit off and just kept going. And that's really the measure of a man, is how you react on a bad day. But as far as tiddlywinks, I beg to differ. I grew up with tiddlywinks and manhole covers. But the hard part was getting a basket that will hold up. They're 100 pounds.
There's a lot of things that make it different, though, isn't there? I mean, like even to the point of the amount of support the athletes are getting now off sponsors. There's some great sponsors out there that are.
But can I just bring back? So there was a point that was going on there that I wanted to comment on. Actually, is you mentioned Alha, and the biggest comment about Alha that needed mentioned was not just his deadlift, but he was the first guy to train strongman. Yeah. And that was, I think, the real crux of that.
The only thing he did was...
So, in other words, Bill would find out, you guys did powerlifting training. Even Maggie. I thought Maggie had done a bit more than most. But he said to me, no, I never had a log. He never had a log in his whole time. So how can you expect... Because the comment came because I said, what was your best ever log? And there's always that slight kind of, oh, geez. Nowadays, guys are doing 220 kilos and you have to go, all right, 175 or something. But he never had a log to train on. So that's a pretty darn good log. You don't have a log to train on,
Yeah, nowadays, if people don't have the kit, like I say, it's...
And Ahola used to do, I think, 3 days, or 2 days strongman, 2 days powerlifting was his kind of, his heavy workout. So, yeah, I think that's worth noting very much.
Not only did we not have the events, we had the mindset where we didn't need the events. It's just like, put it in front of us, we'll do it. I went to a competition called Ladefi Mark 10. There was 4 events. Throw a 56-pound block off the back of a truck for distance, do a partial squat of 1 inch, do a wheelbarrow with about 850 pounds in your hands for maybe 8 meters, and then a 200-meter shuttle run with 90 kilos sack on your back. And it's 50 down or back, down or back. I watched the competition in Montreal, Canada for Canadian Championship. And I went home and I built the sack. I put it on my back. I ran up a little hill and I said, screw that. I'm not going to train with this thing. On the partial squat, I got in the hack squat, put all the weight on it I could, and did sets of 50 and 100 with about 3 or 4 inches. I threw the rock just a little bit. And as far as that wheelbarrow race and the deadlift, that's all I did was deadlift. So when I got to the competition, I did really well and broke the record in the throw. I did okay in the wheelbarrow. In that partial squat, we went nearly 2,000 pounds, 1,800. And then when it came to that sack race, I was really motivated because what happened in the Canadian Championships, there was an old Highland Games guy and the Canadian champion racing. And I watched how that Highland Games athlete, almost 40 years old, couldn't keep up with the Canadian. He just outran him a little bit on each length. So what I did was I took off on that first 50 yards, and when I got near the finish to turn, I didn't slow down. And then I just, like a truck, turned and took off and made this guy catch me. I did that once, twice. On the third one, I turned and I put down the afterburners. And I just ran away from him. I set their world record, and they had done this competition for 5-6 years, and I never trained with it. So there was our mindset. You don't really have to train the events back in the day. You just have to be strong, and as strong as you can be.
What do you think is the most important thing then? You know, people always say, is it genetics, is it mindset, is it nutrition, is it training?
Well,
Or is it all of it?
Oh, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. But for a specific, I really think it's your environment and how you grow up. So many of the guys that are they were adopted, they don't have parents, they had a rough, tough childhood. Like, for instance, you didn't have it easy, living on the farm and the rest, but you had a great role model, and role models and brother and people around you, and you were extremely successful because you were like them. For myself and many athletes that I see, they never really had anybody to follow. And so you try to find somebody, a hero type that you can emulate. And for me, it was a guy named Jim Thorpe, the great Carlisle Indian. He won the pentathlon, the decathlon, was a pro football player, pro baseball player. That's who I wanted to be like. How could I do that? Do everything extremely well and not focus. When we had our competition yesterday, and you see our Ukrainian boys, and know what they're doing, fighting in a war, and how tough their life is, and how they've grown up. I think it's environment that puts something in your heart, your mind, and when your soul says, I can, I will, I can, I will, I can, I will. The 4 strongest words in your vocabulary, 3, I can, I will. Repeat it again and again and again. You can't fail. You know, there's no room for doubt. And I think that has probably the biggest impact is mental. But then surely it's going to be physical. Look at Mark Felix. Is that a catcher's mitt? How many times do his fingers go around the bar? My fat little hand would squeeze the bar out to my fingertips. So yeah, is it genetics? Is it body type?
One
is
thing
it
I think
mindset?
a lot of them that you speak to over years, obviously we've all spent a lot of time with the guys. I think myself as well, and possibly yourself included, is that like if someone starts doing strongman, they might not have a particularly good job, maybe not earn a lot of money, and if they're good at it, if they're only good at that, like I found myself was like that was what I was good at. I didn't have a lot of other options. That was what I felt I was good at. I didn't do well at school or anything like that. So you think, right, this is your shot. And I don't think it's like even it's not even a case of wanting to do well. It's the fear of failure more than the want to do well. If that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
I think like Eddie, for instance. You know, we all here know Eddie quite well. I don't think it's wanting to do well. It's the fear of him losing is his main drive. And same with all the guys, really. Thor, I don't know what you think about that.
Oh, without a doubt. I believe the reason that I trained as heavy as I did in the gym, which is some incredible things, if I would explain the volume, was the fear that when I wasn't ready to go to the competition, and in fact, I was so overtrained, I'd done so much in the gym, that a lot of the times it didn't translate onto the platform because I'd done way too much and I wasn't recovered.
You were so far in front.
I said this lesson to Bibby, the other day. I remember you telling me this when I was younger, and that was the one thing you'd have changed about your training. Wasn't I wish I'd done all the events and this and that, because your training was your training. You can't just change everything. But I remember you saying, I think it was to Jamie Reeves, you said, I wish I hadn't just trained such volume right at the end. I think you said you had to do it for your own confidence. You'd go up and you'd be hitting these numbers again and again, and actually if you hadn't, you might have gone.
you know, the one
even
person
further
that amazes me
on
with
contest
that,
day.
The one person that proves that is Andy Bolton. If you look at how little he lifts before a massive lift,
It's crazy.
It blows your mind. He, you know, obviously we all know he's like.
Do you know Bibby 2 days ago, because we just had the log yesterday, he sat in the Smith machine and did 5 plates either side and pressed it up and down.
I don't believe it. Yeah, I spend my life trying to convince him not to do things.
It's a lot of weight to sit there and press up and down, isn't it?
But you know,
It's 10 plates total. That's 200 kilos and whatever the Smith machine weighs. It's a lot of pressing.
Well, through history, I think we've seen athletes that can perform well by doing ultra high lifts for 5, 6, 8 weeks before the competition and still be at their best in the competition. Myself, we did a periodization, which was a lot of reps and sets with then increased resistance and dropping the number of reps until we came to a point. And that peaking was really a short period of time. But I guess it depends on your belief system and just how your body performs. If I wasn't doing hypertrophy phase right up to the competition and just, if I could brush my teeth or comb my hair, I wasn't pumped enough. So we really blasted the weight. And I don't believe that our strongmen are doing that today. They're doing less volume, more technique work, much lower repetitions.
To their benefit.
Oh, without a doubt.
Well, they're lasting longer as well. There's some of these guys that are in it for a long time now. Most people are running out pretty quick, and I think that's due to, you know, being more specific on events and possibly not. Because I mean, it was yourself that you were so far in front with your static lifts. You could have been probably 10-20% weaker and still won those lifts.
Which is great. But talking about kind of length, we're going to have to end our podcast there. The whole point of this thing is us to have conversations, but also for you to get stuck in as well. So if you've any questions at all you'd like to ask any of our future guests, please send them in and we will happily ask them. This one was for Bill Kazmaier, the legend that is. So it's been a special one.
He'll be back.
We've got to be back. I think for 4, 5 or 6, because we can speak to Bill all day. Bill, thank you very much for inspiring us.
But there's just one more story.
Tell us.
Say you get hurt and you want to adapt. You're doing high volume. In the bench press, after I set world record, I tore the pectoral off of the steel bar bend. What are you going to do? Well, if you move over about an inch and you put the load on this side, you take it off this one. I got back to a point where I did 600 pounds for a triple. My best in the past was 600 for 5. I got ready to go to the competition 2 weeks out, and I came flying up with a squat, a 900 double. My coach said, ram this second one. I came flying up. The bar bent. I blew the nerve in this shoulder. My arm dropped. I had to pick it up to go and squat in 83 in Sweden. And then in the bench press, off of a 600 triple, I did 501. So, you try to adapt, try to overcome and just gloss over an injury. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Is that the one where there's a shot, the camera's on top of you, and you can see the bar is just almost diagonal when you're pressing it?
Yeah, that's another one. That's where I let 2 guys wrap my knees, and I corkscrewed in the squat. There were 6 angels standing behind me. As I fell to my face going, fudge! That's with a fudge, like real sweet. These guys caught the weight, almost 900 pounds. I came back later. I couldn't hardly walk. I couldn't push on my feet, and I bench pressed. As it started to move, I couldn't control it, and I just rode it out. So when you look at that lift and you analyze just how strong some guys are in the upper body, I watched something going on over in the Sandy area on our planet with a guy doing nearly 800 pounds.
Julius Maddox.
Well, he does a real legit bench. I'm talking about the guys with a bar that when they put it on the rack, it goes click, 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 like aluminum. And the bar doesn't bend. So, I mean, if you got a big weight, that bar bends. And as you heave it and blast it.
Yeah.
So many more stories. Look forward to coming back.
Yes.
Thanks for the opportunity to be on your podcast.
The King. Bill Kazmaier.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.